urgent public safety matter this evening. So with that, we're going to have introductions, and we are very strict on time limits. We have somebody who will show when there's 15 seconds, and then they'll show when time is up. And I will interrupt mid-sentence anybody after she has said time is up, and we go to the next candidate. We're going to start with 1 minute. Mr. Orange has just arrived. With Tommy Wells, you have 1 minute to introduce yourself. Tommy?
Good evening, everyone. And thank you for such a great turnout, everyone being here, really being part of one of the most important elections of the city's history. Our city's at a crossroads, and it's extremely important that all our citizens hear from the candidates. What you're going to learn is you're going to learn about our differences. You're going to learn about our personal stories. I came here 30 years ago as a child protection social worker. I worked my way through law school here in the District of Columbia. And then what I've done my whole career is I fought for what's right. I'll bring a lawsuit on behalf of children in the city and have continued to fight for good education as a member of the DC School Board, and certainly on the City Council. You've seen that I fought for campaign finance reform and try to bring integrity and trust back to our city government. That's what I'll do as your mayor. And again, it's great to see everyone here this evening to be part of this process. Thank you.
Mrs. Bowser, you're next.
Well, good evening. I'm delighted to be here. My name is Muriel Bowser, and I'm running for mayor because I believe we need a fresh start in the mayor's office. We launched our campaign March 23rd. We walked every ward, talked to neighbors on their doorsteps, at the grocery store, in churches, to see what they want for the future of the District of Columbia. They said we need urgent and focused attention in the mayor's office to focus on the big issues of our future. I'm proud of where our city has come. A child of this city, family here 5 generations, I know how far we've come, but we can't take our future for granted. We need to focus on how we have more affordable housing, how we grow our middle class, how we improve our schools across all 8 wards. We've been able to get the job done in Ward 4, go down to the council and pass common sense legislation, and we can do it again with your help. There's energy around what we're doing, and we can get a fresh start.
Thank you, and good evening. I'd like to thank the Citizens Association, Business Association, the Martin House, and all of you mostly for coming out here today to listen to this debate. But before I start, I do have 2 important announcements. Number 1, I was able to get the lease negotiated to return the Department of Motor Vehicles to Georgetown Park, and they will be opening in May. So that's a terrific thing. And number 2, for those of you who are not here over the holidays, we will be reopening Wisconsin Avenue both ways with 3 lanes, returning it to the way it was before the disaster that got there today. So we've negotiated that. That's what's been happening. I'm Jack Evans, the Ward 2 council member. I've represented Georgetown for 22 years. I'm a resident here. My wife, Michelle, and my daughter, Maddie, are right over here. We've done an enormous amount in this community and in this city in the last 22 years. And during the course of this debate and this campaign, I will be able to explain to you why I should be the next mayor of the District of Columbia. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is so wonderful to be here this evening with the residents of Georgetown and the citizens throughout the District of Columbia. My name is Reta Jo Lewis, and I'm running for mayor. And I will tell you that as I run for mayor of the city, it is because as I have listened to residents throughout Ward 1 through Ward 8, it breaks my heart when they tell me we're not a city that's working for everyone. We're not a city that is placing a priority on affordable housing for all, not just our low and moderate income residents, but for young people, and especially for seniors. We're not a city that's working for everyone, that is not placing a priority on economic opportunity for all. We're not a city that is working for all when we see that deals are being done for the few and not for the many. I'm running for mayor, and I commit to you to be the kind of
Thank you.
mayor that you'll be
Thank
proud of.
you. Mr. Orange?
Well, good evening, Georgetown, and Happy New Year. It is an honor and a privilege to be here with you, and I'm here to ask you for your vote on April 1 for Mayor of the District of Columbia. I will bring you a very fair, reasonable, and balanced government while leaving no one behind and taking no one for granted. I will bring affordable housing, access to health care, and a great opportunity for a great education in the District of Columbia. I will make sure that the DC dollar circulates in the DC, and I will protect our assets and your assets as well. I ask for your vote on April 1, 2014. Happy New Year. Glad to be here in Georgetown.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andy Shallal, and I'm also running for mayor for the District of Columbia. I'm running for mayor because I see more and more the city is becoming a tale of two cities. It's becoming very divided. On one hand, we have the wealthiest population in the country. On the other hand, we have the highest childhood poverty. On one hand, we have the most educated population in the entire nation. On the other hand, our schools are rated at the very bottom. Our dropout rate is one of the highest, and our illiteracy is the highest in the entire country. These are unacceptable. We cannot continue to call the city a city that works for everyone when we have so many people that are left behind. These people are left behind the shadows of the cranes and concrete that our elected officials counting just cranes and high-rises and start counting the things that matter, and that is the people of the District of Columbia. And that's what I'll bring to this race. Integrity and counting the people of the District of Columbia. Thank you.
We're now going to have questions that will be addressed by all the candidates. Some have criticized our city planners for reducing the amount of parking, required parking, in new apartment buildings in some neighborhoods, and for allowing an apartments in single-family homes. The fear is that it will substantially reduce on-street parking availabilities. Others feel it did not reduce the new apartment, if we did not reduce the new apartment parking requirements, as underground parking is so expensive, it would contribute to much higher rents. What do you think? 1 minute each. Bowser, you're first.
I think that the Office on Planning got this one wrong, and that's why I introduced emergency legislation that in some cases would limit the expansion of visitor parking. Walking in Georgetown neighborhoods, walking all around Ward 2, people tell me that DDOT got it wrong, and we stopped it working with your council member who joined me in that effort. This is what I know. Our city's growing. We'll have 200,000 new people here by the year 2040, and not everyone will be able to drive. I approach our transportation system in a balanced way. We have to have excellent public transportation. We have to have excellent bike share, bike parking, bike lanes, and we have to have roads that work and the ability to park. So it's very important that we approach our entire transportation system with a balance. So we asked the Office on Planning not to eliminate parking minimums, because that was their first plan, but to look at a way to manage it in a better way.
Mr. Evans.
Thank you. The Office of Planning definitely got this wrong. I agree with keeping the parking requirements just as they are. I joined with Councilmember Bowser and Councilmember Che to address that with the Office of Planning. Taking away more parking spaces in this city is a terrible idea. What we have to do is focus on alternative means of transportation, something I've done in my 22 years on the council. I served on the Metro Board and was the advocate for not only completing the 103-mile system that currently exists, but for expanding Metro, and someday we hope to have a Metro in Georgetown. Secondly, bike lanes. We have more bike lanes in Ward 2 than all the other wards combined, and we will continue to promote bike as another alternative transportation. Light rail, again, something this council has supported, building the light rail system that will connect Georgetown to downtown to the eastern parts of the city. So the alternative means are very important, but keeping the parking as it is also very critical. Thank you.
I served as the chief of staff in the Department of Public Works, but it used to be called DPW. I want you to know, parking is one of the most important things that any agency does when it deals with transportation. Now, I live right downtown, right on 5th and Mass, and I've watched everything get built. And what I watched was not any more parking spaces coming on, and it would be unacceptable to allow our Office of Administration to eliminate any parking inside of buildings. What we have to do is to continue to offer a comprehensive strategy, a comprehensive plan of how residents, not just downtown, but in all of our neighborhoods, especially like Georgetown. In your 2028 plan, you specifically talked about parking. It is fair for us in communities to have parking spaces that work for all of us.
Well, I also believe that the Office of Planning got this one wrong. There needs to be a proper balance. If you're going to be building units, then there at least should be a parking spot per unit. Clearly, there needs to be a balance here in the District of Columbia. We're getting more and more residents, but also that balance has to include those residents that have been here during the bad times to still be able to be here during the good times and allowed to travel throughout this city and be able to find parking. So there has to be a balance. I applaud those that are studying this issue and making sure there are bike lanes, there's light rail, there's transportation needs that are being addressed by Metro and others. But there has to be a balance, and I believe that balance can only be maintained by when you build units, there should be a parking associated with those units.
I agree, there's a problem obviously with parking. Owning a business in the district is very difficult as it is, and when my customers tell me they're having a hard time parking, it really makes it even that much more difficult to attract business and keep business. It's very interesting, oftentimes I will get a lease for a space to be able to open a restaurant, and then all the neighbors get upset because there's no parking there. I had nothing to do with the way that it was zoned, and suddenly I'm the one that's at fault that needs to find parking for all the people that have to come in. The other thing, I think we can't really address parking unless we address public transportation. I think that's one of the major issues, is the fact that a lot of people want to see the Metro open later, especially on the weekends. They want to see it later. Maybe we can go for 24 hours. A lot of my patrons and my customers, my employees, would like to be able to see that. The other thing is increasing the hours on the parking meters is not working for many of my customers, and I think we need to bring it back to 6:30.
Well,
I think that on something like parking, like everything else, we have to work smart. First thing is that if the building does put the parking space in there and everybody gets a residential parking sticker, we're going to wipe out all the neighborhood parking in Georgetown if they have the neighborhoods right to park in the neighborhood. We have to be a lot smarter than that. You know, you've adopted a plan in Georgetown that does see that there will be a new metro station here. We'll bring in a streetcar system, which I've been a champion of. As the city grows, if our businesses are going to survive and our local businesses, people have to come into Georgetown and out, and they all shouldn't come in a car. So one of the bills that I've proposed, which I proposed last time and this council killed, that I've re-proposed, is when we have infill development and we put a building in there and they want anything from the government, they negotiate that the residents at the building will not get residential parking. We can't build any more residential parking. And so on the streets, we cannot add more spaces. So it's more important to be smart than just anything else than that.
members of the Georgetown Citizens Association pay for anti-crime watchers. Non-members benefit from the service, but do not share in the costs. Should communities be allowed to establish special taxing districts, such as Maryland municipalities and business improvement districts here in the city, to finance extra services so that all local residents would bear a share of the burden? 1 minute each. Mr. Evans.
I was the author of the bid legislation. Back in 1992, when I first came on the council, I offered it. It didn't pass. 94, 96, we got it passed, and bids are now one of the most successful economic development tools that we have. Bids are business improvement districts that provide clean and safe. We have one in Georgetown. Virtually all of Ward 2 has one, and I just sponsored legislation that will enable bids to exist in Ward 7 and 8 to promote economic development activity in those wards. The idea of a residential bid is something I've considered and would support. The idea of being able, of everyone in a neighborhood having to pay for it. It doesn't have a lot of traction, and frankly, one of the concerns I have about it is if a neighborhood that does have resources has one, neighborhoods that don't have resources are going to be very either jealous of it or angry that that neighborhood has it. So we have to tread carefully if we're going to go down that road, and it's something I would look at much more carefully before I supported doing the idea.
Thank you. Lewis?
The administration that I would lead, we would not be dealing with inequalities of actions and activities from neighborhood to neighborhood. I believe what's happening right now in the neighborhood that I live in, and what's happening right here in the neighborhood where we are tonight, in these business improvement districts, in these neighborhood improvement districts, we should be using these examples in the communities that I live in the communities of which we are, to take this model all across the city under a comprehensive plan, under a comprehensive strategy that is smart and serves all of our citizens, because everyone wants the same rights. Everyone wants to be able to maintain what is fair, and everyone wants to be in a situation where their communities are improved. And so in an administration that I would lead, it is about fairness. It is about bringing models that will work throughout the city of Washington.
I forgot to say that the candidates who were invited to participate were all those who have been elected at least to the city council. We invited 2 other candidates to participate who we thought were reasonable long shots.
Excuse me? Excuse you.
No, we have another candidate who is seated at the table who was not invited, as we did not think he was a reasonable shot. But that, we are 10 candidates altogether. We would not be able to ask that many questions if we had all 10. So, Mr. Oren.
He'll never come here again.
Okay, well, this question deals with business improvement districts, and actually I have oversight over the business improvement districts, and they work extremely well here in the District of Columbia. Just recently got back from London visiting the British business improvement districts to examine this question of how do we get the business improvements east of the river, where you don't have commercial properties that you can actually tax and be able to generate revenue to provide the same services. So I do believe that the business improvement districts work, and we have to find a way to ensure that the district government utilizes its surpluses in those areas that do not have commercial establishments which will support a business improvement, and so that those communities can also get the same services that those other communities, such as the downtown bid, the Golden Triangle, the Capitol Hill bid, receive those services where it's safe and clean. This is an issue that my committee will continue to study, and we certainly are working with all the communities east of the river to ensure that they will in fact have bids as well. In fact, the Anacostia will now have a bid.
Mr. Shallal?
Yes, I agree. I was actually, I had many restaurants that were involved in the bids districts, and I liked the idea of having a bid, the fact that you're able to have clean streets and safe streets and see people dressed in uniforms that you can actually turn to when you have issues or questions or things like that. And I always wondered, why don't we have them east of the river? I think there's opportunities there to have bids east of the river, and they not only serve the purpose of getting the community to get sort of excited about having some sort of shared interests and shared values in business, but also to provide jobs. I think the city needs to be able to provide jobs for many of the areas east of the river, and a bid, I think, is a good starting point for that as well, to be able to have people that are going to go around, beautify the neighborhood, clean the streets, make sure the streets are safe, get the neighborhood more engaged, and get all the citizens more involved in beautifying and maintaining their community.
Thank you. Let me say that there is no level of crime that's acceptable in any neighborhood, including Georgetown. And there's many ways that we can get at that by being a lot smarter. Under current law, and I am addressing this under my committee now, that police officers are not allowed to watch the cameras in real time. so that we know that the cameras that we use in neighborhoods and hotspots, if you have a neighborhood where there's a lot of break-ins into cars, the police are not allowed to deploy those cameras to watch to protect you unless the lieutenant is sitting next to them to watch that camera. We can work a lot smarter. Every single neighborhood can be safe, and we can do that together, but we're going to have to do things differently. It's not about how many police officers you put on the street, even though that helps, but it's how smart you use them. Thank you.
Ms. Bowser?
Thank you, Davis. I thought your question was about residential assessments and special residential assessment districts. So let me address that directly. Because when I hear you say that, I hear you saying that neighborhoods aren't getting the services that they've already paid for through their taxes. And when I hear you say that, I want to make sure that our police department is giving your neighborhood the attention it needs, our public services is giving your neighborhood the attention that it needs, fire department and EMS, which we are having so much trouble with, is giving your neighborhood the attention that it needs. We pay a lot of taxes already. You shouldn't have to pay more to get basic city services.
To be the main elements of any limitation on political donations.
Are you going to give me an opportunity
No.
to answer the question?
1 minute each. Ms. Lewis, Ms. Lewis, you're up.
Isn't it hard enough to run for mayor? Do I have to deal with you as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Lewis, you're up.
This is not slavery.
Lewis is up.
This is not the slave thing. You cannot do that.
Yes, it is.
I just want you to understand. I'm a free African American man. Okay? All right. First of all, let me say this. I don't even understand the question, but I'm trying to pick up with what's happening here. Okay? When it comes to our tax dollars in Washington, D.C., what we have to do, we have all the services and the programs that we need in the government now. The problem is that we have...
Who are you?
Yes.
We don't know your name.
My name is Christian Carter.
Thank you.
I'm actually from this neighborhood right here. I'm a seventh-generation Washingtonian. I'm a mayoral candidate. The media, some of the media, not all of you, because a lot of you are wonderful, but some of the reporters that work with some of these candidates have been trying to block me from off of the scene, from being able to move forward. But I'm not going to allow that to happen, because this is a democracy, and we should be able to all be a part of this process. Just because these council members are running for mayor and they feel as though they're above us, and a lot of them do, they're not, and I'm here to show that. I'm here to prove that. Thank you.
You know, I want to respect you as the moderator, as I respect, and I think we all have to respect each other. But to say that we invited people here who were councilmen and 2 long shots, the only thing that I'm looking for is a fair shot. And the fair shot is for the people in the district of Columbia. And the fair shot is the question that he asked us about limiting contributions. And I think, yes, we have to limit contributions. I think the council has made some important steps, but we have to be even more aggressive. And that's why I call for partners like strong attorney generals that needs to be placed on the ballot, that the people of Washington vote to be placed on the ballot. I call for a strong IG to be there to investigate allegations when anyone in our community does wrong who represents us or who works for us. And the fair shot that any of us wants is that we are in a democracy. And for someone who traveled around the world, for President Obama and Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton, it is all about democracy and about the right to vote and about citizens having the ability to come to you and to ask you and tell you that I want to earn your vote and I want to earn your trust and to vote for me.
Well, I do believe that we should ban corporate contributions only if we ban council members from being on corporations' payroll. We have a number of council members that making $250,000, $290,000 a year, and at the same time, they're voting to ban corporate contributions. So that appears to me to be an inequality in and of itself. If we're going to have a true representation of the people, then all of us need to be free and clear of any type of appearance of impropriety, and that is eliminating and banning outside employment by corporations, by council members on corporations. So if you're going to ban corporate contributions, also ban council members for being on the payrolls of those corporations, and that's the only way that I believe it can be fair and equitable.
I want to apologize for calling you a long shot. I meant to say having a reasonable chance of
All right, I think you should stop
I'll
while
just
you're
pretend
here.
I didn't hear that, but that's
Stop
okay.
while you're here.
That's all right. So we were on campaign contributions. I've been working in the city in politics for a very long time. Back in 1991, I led an initiative called Initiative 41, which was to limit campaign contributions to $100 for citywide races. And guess what? What happened to it? The city council overturned it. If we are to talk about empowering our citizens, that's where it starts. If money becomes the way that we talk, then it's going to be very difficult for people to be able to be heard, people that cannot afford to be part of the mix. I believe in public financing of campaigns. They do it in many other states, including New York. That's the way I think we should go, because I see the corrosive effect of money on politics. I see the pay-to-play politics. I've been raising funds and I understand what that looks like. It's not pretty. It's not pretty. You have to go begging for money, and there's always this idea that somebody else wants something in exchange for it. I think we've seen how money has corroded our political process, and I think it's time that we stop this idea of this unlimited amount of money for financing.
Thank you. As Democrats, is what we've seen what corporate contributions are doing to our country after Citizens United. Not any one of us should be accepting corporate contributions, let alone bundling corporate contributions from limited liability corporations where we don't even know who owns them. We can do that by choice. We don't have to wait for a law to tell us to do that. 23 states in America does not allow corporate contributions, but it's allowed here in DC. I'm the only candidate running that is not allowing corporate contributions to be part of my campaign. I'm not taking PAC dollars either. Every single contribution to me has a name on it. You know where they live, you know who they are, and you can call them and ask them why they gave their contribution. You cannot do that with the rest of the candidates up here. We've seen how corrupting it's been. We see a mayor that's in trouble because of a pay-to-pay politics of corporate, again, a candidacy that was awash in corporate contributions and then favorable treatment to the corporate donor as soon as about 8 months after he was elected mayor. We can stop that, and we can stop that tonight.
Davis, I never actually heard your question. I'm sorry.
What should be the main elements of any limitations on political donations?
So thank you for that question. And I had the opportunity to work with my colleagues over the last couple of years over ethics reform and campaign finance issues. I was very proud that we created a board of ethics and government accountability that really put a board that is doing something in place, a new code of conduct that is holding public officials and public employees accountable. In terms of campaign finance, I believe that the hallmarks of campaign finance is disclosure, sunlight, and enforcement. I was proud to work with my council colleagues to make sure that our Office of Campaign Finance, which really wasn't enforcing our existing laws, had the tools they need to do that. We added an additional $1 million, 9 new employees, and we see more aggressive action from them. So no, I do not support this idea. Really, it's a fake idea of saying I'm not going to take corporate contributions, but I'll take it from the presidents, the employees, the board members of those corporations. Think not that these...
Mr. Evans?
Thank you.
I believe our campaign finance laws, where they are right now, are where they should be. My background is at the Securities and Exchange Commission in the Enforcement Division, and the hallmark of all of our laws are disclosure. Disclosure, enforcement, and penalties. What happens when you lower the limits, which I ran a campaign in 1996 with the $50 limits, and it was almost absurd. No one had any money, and what started to creep into our system, which wasn't there then and isn't there now, is outside money through tax and things that you cannot figure out where the money's coming from. That is what has corrupted our federal system, is the money that comes from the outside sources. What we have in the District of Columbia are among the lowest limits of any jurisdiction in America. Virginia, unlimited. Maryland, $10,000. The district, $2,000. So where we are now is where we should be. Stronger disclosure, stronger enforcement, and mostly stronger penalties if you violate those laws.
Well, if any of you don't know, I'm the candidate with no money. I wasn't going to make it out. You know, I'm taking corporate contributions, but it's not the corporate contributions that create the problems in the system. It's the fact that I get a contribution from Andy, and then I let Andy's daughter come in and run my agency for me. That's a conflict of interest, and that's what the problems are. So I think that what we need to do is look a little deeper. I mean, you all sound pretty good, you have great answers, but I think that at the end of the day, we just need to look at what's happening behind the scenes. Thank you.
Did you vote for or favor the Large Retailer Accountability Act, which would have raised the minimum wage for large national chains with large stores whose employees are not unionized? The proposal came up shortly after Walmart announced plans to locate it in the district. 1 minute each. Mr. Orange.
Yes, I wholeheartedly supported raising the living wage and the minimum wage to $12.50 per hour. And actually went out and led the charge and then came back and introduced the Minimum Wage Act of 2013, which we just passed unanimously to raise the minimum wage to $11.50. In addition to that, it just forced the mayor to raise the living wage, which I actually championed in 2006 when we brought in $11.75 per hour. Just the other day, he announced that it will be raised to $13.40, and there will be another adjustment on March 1 of this year, which will take it to $13.70 pursuant to the law. As this government has not followed the law as it relates to the living wage, in DC, workers have lost in excess of $20 million. So the question now is, how do we make them whole? Each person that has been working over the years has lost about $3,500. And before I take my seat, this whole thing about we have a surplus, we do not have a $20 million surplus because it's owed to the employees who didn't get it in the year 2013.
I did support the LRAA when it was sitting on the mayor's desk. I did speak with the mayor about it, about trying to sign it, to pass it through, and he said that it wasn't a very good bill. And I said, well, if it wasn't a good bill, where were you at the process while the bill was being developed? How come you weren't there to really tell the people about it so you get people behind a better bill that you want to propose? I think once the bill reached his desk, he had to sign it. I was very much a supporter of that. I have been fighting for these types of things for a long time. I am the only one in this campaign that has actually created jobs. I run a multi-million-dollar company with 530 employees, many of them full-time, with great jobs. They have advancement opportunities. We have sick leave for all. That's including tip servers, which is something that the city council voted against. I just want to be clear that we are way, way ahead of the curve. So while they're talking about it, we're actually doing it.
The LRA bill was really what was called the Walmart bill, was a symbolic act. At best, it would affect workers after 4 years, and it would not affect more than 3,000 workers. What we ended up doing, what I promised I would do after I voted against that bill, is to do something real. And that is to raise the minimum wage for all the low-wage workers in DC. And that's what we've done together, and that is what I promised to do. But we also went a step further. The bill that I introduced with 9 co-introducers had it indexed so that the poor of DC don't have to come hat in hand each year to the city council to say, will you raise our wages? It's indexed to the consumer price index for urban areas. I'm proud of what we've done. We've really showed equity and social justice for the rest of the country. It's part of what makes our city great, and I'm very proud of that. Rather than just a symbolic act of the LRAA bill, we did something, and I'm proud that we did it.
Mr. Carter.
Well, you know, I'm definitely in support of the LRAA. One of the groups, RDC, that was pushing it, that was pushing the LRAA. I was a part of that. I marched with them down at the 50th anniversary for the March on Washington. And what I believe is that when you look at the minimum wage, it definitely needs to increase. But we haven't done good enough, guys. I know you was living on $8.25 for a couple of days, but that really doesn't change the situation. Doesn't allow you to see what's really, really, truly going on. The people in our communities can't afford to keep up with the times. So we need to be able to put in place a whole different scale. We need a payment when it comes to looking at the money that we earn here, when it looks at the cost, all the cost of our living, should I say. And if we do that, then what we can do is we can catch up, because people in the second, we're not going to be able to be.
Thank you, Ms. Bowser.
Thank you. I was not able to support the LRAA bill, the Walmart bill. I did not, I believe that bill would actually have perverse effects in chasing much needed retail out of the District of Columbia. I was so heartened to hear stories from people who are getting on buses to go to Walmart in Maryland or Virginia so that they could have access to affordable goods. Now they can go to Walmart, which where they were going to go to anyway, in the District of Columbia. That bill didn't work. I was proud to support a living wage bill for all that will bring all of our minimum wage workers up to $11.50 in just a short period of time. I also know this, though, that the answer to really growing our middle class, we can't just focus on minimum wage issues. We have to focus on how we get more DC residents in middle income jobs. And that is a much longer and deeper discussion in DC.
I voted for the large retailer bill, and as working with Councilmember Orange, together we were also able to get our sales tax reduced from 6 to 5.75%, the lowest sales tax now in the region, surpassed by both Maryland and Virginia. The large retailer was tied to Walmart, and the Walmart deal was something that I helped negotiate out in Las Vegas in order to bring Walmart to our city, and I'm pleased we did. The bigger issue here is the minimum wage. I support increasing the minimum wage in the District of Columbia, which we voted to do, but we also have to be very careful of our surrounding jurisdictions. We were able to get Montgomery County and Prince George's County to also look at increasing their minimum wage. Virginia never seems to ever be willing to do that, which puts us at a very, very disadvantage competitively. That's why we have to be very careful, but I do support increasing the minimum wage because our workers do deserve it.
Thank you.
What the people in this city told me is that they're not willing to wait on a vote. And that's why people are out talking, lobbying, marching every day about increasing the minimum wage, not just in DC, but around this country. We're seeing that, yes, do I support an increase in the minimum wage? Absolutely. Do I support and favor the living wage? Absolutely. I've said that time and time again. But one of the things that is very clear to me when I'm talking to anyone is I would have said, as the mayor, that bill would never have hit my desk in the first place. And the reason being is that it should have been a conversation and a plan that should have been worked with, in conjunction with all of our leaders and the stakeholders. But the most important stakeholders is the stakeholders of the residents who need the jobs the most. And one of the things that is so clear is that we're placing retail, or we're placing stores, or we're placing business. Are we doing it in the places of the greatest needs? And that was not done in this case.
What, if anything, should be done with the Whitehurst Freeway?
The Whitehurst Freeway. I use the Whitehurst Freeway frequently. I think it's pretty much a bypass that people use oftentimes. I really don't have any definitive answer for that. It's a great street.
Ideally, we'd find a way to take it down. It really does mar the character of the community. It cuts us off from the waterway. It really is an anachronism from a time when we thought that highways should traverse through our cities to get people in, to get people out. And it really destroys the character of one of the greatest neighborhoods in our country. I would take it down. Obviously, not just blow it up tomorrow. We have to plan around it. But I definitely find a way to get it down.
Mr. Carter.
Andy, I might be with you too. I guess maybe we just go ahead and just pave the roads again and go over to Southeast and pave those roads as well.
This is the time I say I support the Ward 2 council members. I'm not sure about that one. So we've had the opportunity you look at a lot of roads that get closed, and I'm always concerned about how long it takes to get anywhere, and increasingly long it takes to get anywhere in the District of Columbia. One of the most surprising things I found about running for mayor is how long it takes to get anywhere. And so when we talk about taking down roads, when we talk about going through the park, we deal with this with the Parkway. I'm dealing with it up in Ward 4, the Kelmia Bridge. We're going to deal with it as we take down 16th Street. We have very few roads. And so we have to be very careful. We don't have a lot of space for more roads. So we have to be very careful in planning on what we would do with these roads. I recognize the challenges that people feel and the concerns that people have about this roadway in particular, but I think we have to be very careful about losing capacity.
Mr. Evans. Many years ago, I stood with Secretary Bruce Babbitt at the Whitehurst Freeway. I said, "So, Mr. Secretary, what do you think?" He said, "Standing underneath it, this is a very ugly piece of work and should be torn down. But when I'm driving home to Northwest Washington, where I live, it is one of the most beautiful sights I've ever seen." As many as everyone knows, I would love to tear down the Whitehurst Freeway. It is, in all honesty, an erector set marring what is one of the most historic waterfronts in America. The residents of Foggy Bottom and the Palisades are adamantly opposed to tearing down the Whitehurst Freeway. So I don't see that as an option that's going to happen anytime soon. In the meantime, the 2028 plan, the Georgetown, is looking at ways, if we're going to have this erector set, how can we make it a little bit nicer? Is there things we can do to dress it up, to make it work for the community as long as it's here? And so I'll be working with everyone to see if we can make it work a little better while we still have it. But at the end of the day, the Whitehurst Freeway someday will be gone.
Taking down the Whitehurst Freeway needs to come under any comprehensive strategy or plan that we would be discussing about any transportation, mode of transportation, or method of transportation, or place that residents and visitors come into the city and move out of this city. The Department of Transportation, we all know, operates extensively in working with federal officials, with state and local officials. I'm sure the people in Ward 8 would like to take down that bridge that just went up. Because the bridge that just went up, I can't even see Ward 8 anymore. So what I'm telling you is this. We can't just arbitrarily decide one bridge versus another bridge. I like to see all kinds of creative ideas that come before us from communities, but it needs to be done in conjunction with any type of system where we come together as a community and talk about what we're going to aggressively go to our federal partners with. We cannot just take down one at a time.
Mr. Arnold.
Okay, well, let's see. 200,000 new residents by the year 2023. I think you need to be careful what you ask for. And I think at any point, great weight should be given to the residents of Georgetown. It's very easy for someone that does not live in this area to say, yeah, tear it down. I want them to have access to the waterway. But have you been in Georgetown during rush hour on M Street trying to get across the Key Bridge? So be careful what you ask for and let the residents of Georgetown decide what's going to happen with the Whitehurst Freeway, and I believe that the freeway will remain.
What approaches, if any, should be taken to decrease the likelihood of lower income district residents being forced from homes by increased rents, or are current policies, generally speaking, adequate? 1 minute, Mr. Wells.
Well, clearly our current policies are not adequate. We've got the greatest loss of affordable housing in the district, in the history of the district. And so there's a couple of things that we need to do. Every time we have public property that we put out for development, the #1 priority for that development is that we have to create affordable housing, especially workforce housing. I oversee fire and police, and those are the folks least likely to live in the District of Columbia. I represent a ward where we have more public housing than any other ward in the city, and we can continue to improve it. But what we're losing is the middle class housing and the folks that, that teach our children, that keep our streets safe. So every time that we have a public asset that goes out for development, the #1 priority for that public asset must be affordable housing, workforce housing, so those that work here can live here.
Mr. Carter.
I believe that to make housing affordable, we have to build on district government land with district government contractors, with district government dollars. Right now, we have a lot of public-private partnerships coming into play. And what they're doing is they're taking the prices of everything up to higher. And they're still using government money with the land as well. I know because I do the services myself and checking them. Like, for instance, take Skyland Development. W.C. Smith, they're doing this project. It's going to be about $23 million just for the first phase of infrastructure work. So what we need to do is we need to look at how we can do some cost-benefit analysis from the contractors who build for us, so that if the costs go down, then the housing can be more affordable because the profit margin grows. I think another thing that we need to do to make housing affordable is we need to, for one, hire residents that live in Washington, D.C. to work on those projects so that they can live there. Because if they don't, then it's not affordable anyway.
Ms. Bowser.
Thanks for that question, because I think that you'll see a big difference between what a new mayor can do and what the current mayor is doing with affordable housing. We're reminded just today of stories of how this current administration has broken its promises east of the river to Ward 7 to transform public housing communities into new communities. We know that to build more affordable housing is one aspect of the affordable housing equation. We have to preserve more. We have a lot of affordable units throughout the district that need investment, including our public housing units, and we have to help our residents afford more. This is what I'm certain of. People love growth in DC and the investments that we're making across town. They just want to make sure that they can be here to afford those investments. We started with a down payment of $100 million in affordable housing, and I'm committed to maintain and increase that investment from the district's end to make sure we're using our public property, metro-owned property, to get more housing for DC residents.
In my time on the council, I've done three things in this area. First, on affordable housing, I was one along with Mayor Williams and then Councilmember Fenty to create the Housing Production Trust Fund, which is the most successful vehicle we've ever had to create affordable housing. It is again funded with over $100 million this year, and I was responsible to make sure that past mayors didn't, number one, reduce the funding or take the funding and not put it back. Secondly, rent control. Along with Phil Mendelson and Jim Graham, the three of us have made sure that rent control remains strong in the city and has now been renewed for 10 years by Congress. And thirdly, on job creation. One of the things we must do in this city, and something I have done most recently with the Convention Center Hotel, is to continue to create jobs for our residents. The Convention Center Hotel, because of the deal I was able to put together, is going to have 600 jobs for district-only residents. And we have now had over 2,000 people apply for those jobs, and they are going to be meaningful employment in our new hotel to give people income so they can afford to stay.
Thank you. Ms. Lewis.
One of the things that we all know is that we have a very serious crisis in affordable housing. So some of the approaches that I would take is that, first, in an administration that I would lead, is that it has to be about enforcement anytime that we make a negotiated contract with anyone that the city would give tax credits, tax incentives, tax abatements, or anything that uses the public dollars, because it is, after all, our money. Number two, I think we have to look at how do we use a one-to-one ratio. When I'm out meeting residents in the District of Columbia, they do not want to have to choose, especially at that low to moderate income question that you asked, between whether they're going to be able to have a house or whether it's someplace they're going to send their kids to school. But if they have to have a choice, they just want the city to be a partner with them. But we cannot be partners if we do not work with the private sector and make sure that we have a relationship that goes on.
Each and every one of you should be outraged by the front page article today on affordable housing. The fact of the matter is we have $1.5 billion in our rainy day fund. We've had over $600 million in surpluses over the last 5 fiscal years, yet we could not spend $1 million on Anthony Wash's project to ensure folks can actually have affordable housing. We should be ashamed that Scotty Irvin in that same article finished his project, but without the assistance of his government. So what is the government doing with the funds? This is the same question about the business improvement districts. If you have a bid downtown, you have commercial establishments that you can tax and they can pay for the bid. If you're east of the river is going to need more subsidy. And it's this government that needs to provide the subsidy. This is the same issue I faced when we brought Home Depot and Giant to Ward 5 on a 25-acre car impoundment lot. But Mayor Williams was smart. Vincent Orange, you can have the $1 million. You can go forward with your project. We're going to build Home Depot and affordable housing in that area. And that's the type of government that we need today.
Thank you. The housing crisis is the most important thing. When I go around all over the city and all the boards, people that say that's the first thing that they're concerned about is affordable housing, whether you're on the lower end of income or on the higher end of income. Even all the new millennials that are moving in here, they're having to double up and triple up or quadruple up in order for them to be able to afford even a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment. So it's a really serious crisis. I think we have to make sure that we continuously fund the Housing Production Trust, 100%. And we cannot just go with the waves, because we keep losing inventory year after year. I think the other thing is the first right of purchase has to be enforced and has to be aided by the city. And I think the other thing, I think we should rethink the idea of public housing. I think public housing, if it's done well, if it's done with wraparound services, safe, clean, with all the services, a daycare center, a place for healthcare, a place for tutoring, a place for literacy programs within the same complex, I think you can see a lot of change happen, and we can bring poor people out of poverty.
Thank you. The district commercial real estate.
We're really going to make sure that our residents are thriving in their businesses, and we have to lower those taxes. So,
Thank you, Ms. Bowser.
I think that we are at a time in our city where we can look at all of our taxes and make sure we're only asking the residents and the businesses in the District of Columbia for what we actually need. I am looking very much forward to the former Mayor Anthony Williams' commission's recommendations to come over to the council. There's a big price tag on them. Some of them will work, some of them won't, but the whole council will have to decide what we're willing to invest taxpayer money in getting these tax breaks. I frankly, my approach on the council when there have been tax proposals before us, like raising taxes on higher income earners, I didn't support that. I didn't support it because it was advanced at the same time where we had huge surpluses. Now we have an opportunity where we're growing our tax rolls to see if we're asking the businesses in the District of Columbia for actually what we need. You're going to have to work with us, though, during budget time, when these cuts have to be funded.
We need to reduce our, the question was about commercial property taxes and the franchise taxes. Right now, our commercial property tax is $1.85 per $100 of assessed value, $1.65 on the first $3 million. Virginia's hovers around $1, $1.10. We need to reduce our commercial property tax. We need to reduce our corporate income tax and our unincorporated business tax, both of which are among the highest in the nation at 9.975, compared unfavorably with Virginia at 6%. What I would do as mayor is what I did as council member with the Tax Parity Act. You may remember 10 years ago, David Catani and I put this together and gradually reduced our commercial property tax from $2.15 to $1.85 and our income tax from the highest in the nation at 9.9% down to the current 8.9 and back to 8.5. As mayor, I would reduce everything 1 cent a year, 1% a year, from 10 to 9 to 8 to 7 to 6. You do it gradually, you can pay for it by the surpluses that are being created on a quarterly basis.
In the next administration, we will have a new CFO who has already started his position. I believe that Mr. DeWitt, in partnership with him, should be the first place that my administration would work with, along with the stakeholders on the council, but more importantly, not just with one group of individuals, but with all the stakeholders in DC, to talk about what we're going to do about, not only about the high rate of taxes, but how do we continue to not only attract business, but how do we maintain business. Maintaining businesses is really all going to be about the workforce that we have here in the District of Columbia. That's one of the things that's going to be a shining example that we know that they're going to have when they're looking to stay in the District of Columbia. That is just one of the things that they're going to be looking at. They're going to be looking to see, do we have a skilled, educated workforce that we know now. We have great knowledge workers, but for the workers of the future, how are we going to continue to train all of those to keep them here? And so it's going to be important to be able to work
Thank
with
you,
them.
Mr. Orange.
First of all, we have to understand that this is a fallacy. On one hand, they're telling you that we have 63 cranes in the city. That's 63 projects. We also have 100,000, we're going to have 100,000 new residents. Businesses are here. We are generating revenue. And the question is, do you want to lower those taxes and at the same time, east of the river suffers? At the same time, we'll continue to have the stories that we have in the front page of the Washington Post. At the same time, our residents will continue to lose their homes because this government allows people to sell your homes because you owe the government $100. We have to really look at and have a proper balance in the District of Columbia. In terms of commercial real estate property, let's don't forget, they just had $2.6 billion in reductions. It cost this city, the taxpayers, $48 million, and it was done without authority. It was done by the CFO's office. So we need to make sure what's really going on with our money and make sure that we don't leave anyone behind, that we don't take anybody for granted, and we don't take our residents' homes and move them out of the city.
Well, being in business, this is very real to me, obviously, but I do believe that the district taxes are too high. I do believe we have to have some parity with Maryland and with Virginia, the jurisdictions right next to us. But maybe somewhere in between would be where we need to be. But I do believe that small local businesses are really the engine of the economy, and I believe that they should get a better shake at taxes than the large retail boxes or the large businesses or businesses that operate outside the city. So I do believe that we need to lower the tax significantly for small local businesses because their dollars circulate back into the economy over and over again, and that's how the money gets regenerated. Whereas local businesses, I think we should keep them at the level of Maryland, which is about 8.5.
Well,
I think Mr. Shallal is right about cutting the taxes on the property rates for small locally owned businesses. Remember, we get revenue from three places: income tax, property tax, and sales tax. You fund the services for over 400,000 people that come here every day to work in these buildings, and then go back home. You pay for the streets, you pay for their emergency services, you pay for them to be able to come to the city and go back, because you know that Congress said we cannot tax their payroll, we cannot tax a commuter tax. So I'm not willing to cut the revenue, or for our revenue, cut commercial property taxes, so you have to pay more to subsidize those that come here that don't pay to be here. So definitely for our small businesses, locally owned businesses, to be able to grow our city, as Mr. Shallal was talking about, I believe that there be something like a Schedule H, because the amount that the businesses pay, whether it be a triple net lease, I won't go too far into that, on property taxes to have a small business here, it should be reduced.
should our sales tax include services such as gym memberships? 45 seconds.
No.
Mr. Adams?
No, they shouldn't. I mean, there's another proposal floating around. This came up a couple of years ago to expand the sales tax to gym services, to massages, to a whole host of things that are not now included. We do not need to expand our taxes at all in this city. We are bringing in record amounts of revenue. What we need to do is spend our money better and more wisely. As your next mayor, that's exactly what I will do. I have chaired the Finance and Revenue Committee for years. I understand the budget. I understand how we spend our money. I need to be in a position of authority, like the mayor, to make the decisions about how we spend our money and how it gets spent wisely, not to raise taxes and tax more people. That's why I want to be your mayor.
You know, I have to go with Muriel on this one. Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, we have to do things in a comprehensive manner. We can't just pick and choose what should be increased and what should not be increased. We have to do it under a strategy to make sure that every one of us understand that it's going to be fair and it's going to apply for all of us. That is the way that I would lead. We would lead by making sure that all of us have a great understanding of what is going on about anything that goes to the increases, especially if it's coming out of everybody's pocketbook.
Absolutely not. But I would also say that in terms of spending, we must make sure that we are spending our dollars with our small local business community pursuant to the law. We've already ascertained that over the past 3 years, this government has shortchanged the small business community to the tune of $783 million because we're not following the law. The law says that every agency head must expend at least 50% of their budget with small local businesses. So when people talk about spending, yeah, we're going to spend your money outside the city. What good does it do for us? The dollars have to be spent in this city so they can circulate and we can hire DC residents, and all boats will rise if we just follow the law.
I don't think at this time we need any more new taxes. I do believe that this city is very rich in revenue and unfortunately very poor in vision. I think what it needs is really more focus on the budget. The budget, I've been looking at it line by line, trying to understand it. It's very complicated. It's very complicated sometimes on purpose, I believe. If you look at things, for instance, how much we spend on homelessness just by itself, we spend $54,000 a year to house a family at DC General. And if you've ever been to DC General, you know that you can do much better with that money than just spend it on a flea-infested, mold-infested space. So I do believe there's an awful lot of ways that we can look into before we even consider the idea of raising taxes.
No, I don't support those, finding more things to tax. But I do think that our tax code reflects us in a way that reflects our values. How are we going to fund our government, not just what are we going to pay for in our government. And I think that definitely our income tax code needs to be more progressive. I proposed increasing the standard deduction so people can keep more of the money they make. We are losing the middle class and the lower middle class out of the District of Columbia. We're going to soon be like San Francisco and other places that lost their middle and lower middle class. We need a better, smarter, more progressive tax code.
First of all, absolutely not. No new taxes for me under my administration, the Carter administration. But let me say this. What I would do is I would give some money to some people. And here's what I would do. I would give it to the youth, and I would give it to the seniors. The seniors need senior support workers. I call them SSWs. And in my administration, we're going to implement that just to help the seniors across the street with their grocery bags, to knock on their door, to let them know, here's a flyer from the federal government letting you know you're eligible for a wheelchair accessible grant, those kind of things. I'll also give them to the youth. I'll turn those summer job program into an IV program. Imagine your visions. And what that's going to do is that's going to take the summer jobs over into the winter, put some income in those families' homes, and it's going to turn around, and it's going to, instead of them sitting in rec centers around the corner, I'm going to have them shadowing CEOs so they can imagine their visions, so they can that's what I'm going to do. That's the IV program.
Thank you.
We're going to pump some blood into Washington, D.C.'s youth. Thank you so much.
Some say per pupil public school spending should be higher in the poorer areas of the city than in relatively wealthy areas such as Georgetown. Do you agree? 1 minute, Mr. Evans.
What we need to do is create a public school system that works for all of our children. I have a lot of ideas on just how to do that. We spend almost $2 billion a year on a school system between charter and public that has about 80,000 children. It's a lot of money that we're spending, and we're not getting the results that we need to get. So I have a plan to approach that. First of all, we need to have our children in school at an earlier age. We moved it into pre-K. We need to have our children in school at age 2 and 3. I have 3 children, as you know, and my children started school very early on, and I learned from that how important that is. Secondly, on the other end, we need services to help children who come home from school at 3 or 4 o'clock to get their homework done and to create an environment so that they can learn. Finally, every school in our system needs 5 things. It needs good teachers, principals, curriculum, safety, and parental involvement. As your next mayor, I am going to ensure that every one of our schools has that, which will create a system that works for everyone.
Ms. Lewis?
From a per pupil perspective, we're already one of the highest in the nation. So I'm not about throwing money after a situation. I am about working with all of the stakeholders to figure out how we're going to solve the problem in the District of Columbia when we have a majority of our young people not graduating, dropping out, being charged with truancy, being charged with being absent. What we have got to have is an understanding that we've gotten the pre-K and elementary almost correct. Now we've got to look at those that are getting ready to go into the workforce. And that's got to be focused on our middle school, focused on our high school. If high schoolers are getting ready to go out into the workforce, we want to make sure that the skill training, vocational training, and technical training is where we will put the resources that is of need for the
Thank
future.
you. Mr. Harris.
Resources should be placed where it is needed. I think the bottom line here is our 3- and 4-year-olds must be trained for kindergarten. And then from kindergarten to 3rd grade, we must ensure that any student entering the 4th grade can read independently and can add, subtract, multiply, and divide. That's the educational foundation to build on. If you can't do that, the United States government said that those children, more likely than not, will make contact with the criminal justice system. And it makes sense. Because if you can't add, subtract, multiply, and divide, how can I introduce you to decimals and fractions and so forth? If you can't read independently going into the 4th grade, then you cannot make the transition to reading for comprehension and moving forward. So we must place the resources where they're needed. If the resources are needed east of the river to ensure that this is the curriculum in place that's going to give children an educational foundation, then we should place the resources there. But everyone should be able to be in their own neighborhoods and get a good education.
Thank you.
I think education is one of the most complicated issues, and we oftentimes try to find just a silver bullet to solve it. But there is no silver bullet, unfortunately. It takes a community, it takes leadership, it takes a vision to be able to solve the whole perplexing issues with education. I think in particular, it's very difficult for us to say that schools have become sort of the dumping grounds for all of our social ills, that we expect teachers to become psychiatrists and nutritionists, and we have to make them do all of these things that deal with poverty. I don't think that's fair. I think for schools to succeed, we have to put enough wraparound services to make sure that they will succeed. Under my administration, they will not be a failing school. Schools do not fail. Communities sometimes fail. Leadership fails. But schools don't fail. We cannot give up on our schools, just like we cannot give up on our kids.
I think any amount of money, especially new money, that we invest in our schools, it's not money alone. There must be a plan attached with accountability to those that pay for that. My vision for the city is that every family has a great neighborhood elementary school that they can walk to. And I know that we can do that in the District of Columbia because I've done that in Ward 6. Every single elementary school in Ward 6 has a waiting list, and we've expanded 3 more elementary schools in Ward 6. And I know we can do that in Ward 7, 8, Ward 5, rest of the whole city. That's the reason we live in a city, so that we have great neighborhood schools that we will walk to. And you know, the way you do it is you work with families, you set goals, you come up with a plan, and you turn the school around. We've done it. Again, the schools in Ward 6 are the most economically integrated schools in the city. It's not just because one group moved in and one group's moving out. That's a vision that we can have for our future, and that's the kind of city we can have going forward.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, I believe that we need a proper distribution of resources all across the city. I also believe that to put some money back into the school system is the #1 thing. We see frustration for the federal government in cutting our budget in the schools. So we have to find ways to subsidize that. #1, I believe that if we look at diversifying our public school system, sorry, but I'm gonna tell you, some people believe when white people are involved in the process, that the money's there. But when they leave, then it's not. So then let's test that. That might be true. So let's bring some more white people and some more Spanish people into more other cultures into our free public educational system. Diversify it so that we can make sure that we have more people that have more resources helping that system. Thank you so much. Oh, excuse me. We also need vocational training as well. That helps bring dollars to the table because there's a lot of federal grants that will help the schools out in those areas. So we have to be innovative And that's what Christian Carter's want to bring to Washington,
Thank you.
D.C. Innovation, or find dollars in other places so we can be helpful.
I believe that resources should be allocated according to need as well. Children in more challenged schools, more challenged feeder systems need more resources. It's not just money though. It may need that they need more experienced principals, more experienced teachers. They may need to see the chancellor in their building. They may need to have more extracurricular activities. So yes, I support having more resources where the need is greatest. But when we do that, we help all of our schools. If we can build successful schools in Ward 8, Ward 7, Ward 6, we won't have the strain in Ward 3. Our biggest problem with schools right now is we've invested a lot. We have great schools in pockets in our city. I push a notion called Alice Deal for All, which says if everybody wants to go to Alice Deal, there's a reason. Let's replicate it around the city. And we know that we especially need to look at Hardy to make sure that Hardy, right on the brink of being great, if we put the right investments in it, it'll get there.
Georgetown is now the largest employment center in the city without a subway stop. Metro, with the introduction of the new Silver Line, is hoping to relieve the choke point between Roslyn and Foggy on the route to Maryland, with an over $3 billion new tunnel from Arlington County to the district, which might possibly have to be paid for in large part by the district and Arlington County. Would you as mayor favor Metro serving Georgetown, and how would it be paid for? 1.5 minutes.
I favor opportunity across, equal opportunity across our city. In the 2028 plan that Georgetown put forward, they have, with the task force and the work that was done, there is great now support with the business community and the residents for a metro stop in Georgetown. What that's going to require is going to be a partnership to make sure that between the U.S. government, the local government, and our regional partners, that we provide transportation systems so that everyone has an equal opportunity to work, to live, and to thrive in communities that have transportation systems that allows residents, tourists, visitors, and the average citizen, and those who work here to be able to get to Georgetown. I've been in Washington for 35 years, and Georgetown didn't have a subway, but they had the connector. So until we get there, we are going to continue to be using our transportation system of buses. We're going to be using the small buses. We're going to be now seeing people getting out of their cars and they're walking, because we are now in a city that allows us to get from point A to point B on our bicycles. I totally agree with the residents of Georgetown and those who want to see a metro stop in Georgetown. Thank you.
Mr. Hart.
First of all, yes, I do agree that they should build a metro station in Georgetown. And two, I agree with the Georgetown Business Improvement District in their plan. I think it's for 2028. But also, let me say, I know how this is created. I was the co-chair of action item number 29, which created the North Capitol Metro Station. And this is how it works. Federal government put up $33 million. The federal government put up $33 million. There was a $33 million assessment of those businesses in the area, and DC government put up $33 million. That was the $100 million that was put up to create that metro stop. And we knew by creating the metro, we would then create NOMA, which is north of Massachusetts. And now that is one of the communities here in the District of Columbia. So it takes a plan, and all it takes the will. It takes the will of the government, someone with a vision to make it happen. The same thing with east of the river. It can all happen. It just takes the will, because the dollars are there, but it takes the will of the government, the will of the elected leaders to say this is in fact going to happen. So the 2028 plan of Georgetown, it will happen if the government says it's going to happen. If the metro station is going to happen, it will happen if you have the government here that says it's going to happen. If we're going to have affordable housing in this city, it will happen because the government has to get out front.
It's all possible, but it's up to the residents of the District of Columbia to elect the right leadership to move forward in order to get this done.
Mr. Shallal.
Sounds like there's going to be a lot of construction going on, and it sounds like we need to keep the Whitehurst Freeway a little longer. I think I would like to be able to live in this city in my lifetime, the few years I have left of my life, that I can drive from one end of the city to another without having to have so many construction projects going on all the time. I was so happy to see, at one point I used to go down to Richmond all the time, and the mixing bowl was going on. By the time that mixing bowl was over, it was just such a relief. And for us to look at a project that's going to take a lot of years to be able to develop and be able to do, I'm not sure if we have, it's worth the kind of effort and time and money that will require to make this work. I would definitely defer to the people of Georgetown. They're the ones that are going to be impacted the most by it, obviously. But I do believe there's other ways for public transportation other than having to tear up the entire part of the city in order to get there.
It's a great question, and this is why I've been such a champion in the city for the streetcar system. Georgetown has become the #1 private employer in the city, and the highest unemployment is in Ward 7 and 8 across the river. The worst public transit in our city is in Ward 7 and 8 and 5, but Ward 7 and 8 across the river. The reason that you have to have a great transit system, because it doesn't matter if you get a job in Georgetown if you can't get to it. If you're bus dependent, and you know in the city that if you have to take 2 buses and there's a light snow, you're not going to work that day. But with fixed rail, with a safe, reliable transit system, it's about transit equity for our city. That is why we have to build out the streetcar system. And we can do it in a shorter period of time than how long it's going to take to get to Metro Stop here. I strongly support the Metro Stop here. We need this in order to have a 21st century metro system so that it's not car dependent. Whitehurst Freeway does not do a whole lot for those that need the jobs the most, that are public transit dependent, that need to get here to jobs. So we have to connect our neighborhoods. The metro system is a commuter system, brings people in, takes people out. What we don't have is a public transit system that connects our neighborhoods to the activity centers, the jobs, and the amenities that we've been creating in our city. So that is why we need a streetcar system. We need to run it to Georgetown, where I'm fighting to get it running on 8th Street. We're 2 years behind. It needs to go east and it needs to go west so we connect our city together.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Absolutely. I would support that process only if I walk through the communities in your different buildings and your coffee shops and found out that that's really what you wanted. Because just because the business improvement district says that that's what we're going to do doesn't mean everybody that lives in the neighborhoods wants that. So I would have to make sure that as long as everybody was okay with that, then we can get that done. Absolutely. I would give the residents what they want. That's my job. Absolutely.
Thank you, and I have served on the Metro Board these last 2 years when the Metro actually developed the strategic plan that would help the system catch up to where we are and get into a state of good repair, $6 billion. Also in that strategic plan is how we get ready for all of the people who will move here in the future, over $20 billion, and including how we deal with the choke points that you mentioned and get a station here in Georgetown. I strongly support having a station here in Georgetown and really filling in our system in a way that works. How we fund it is important. Just to get to the $6 billion I talked to you about is going to take a huge commitment from the 3 jurisdictions who are a part of the Metro Compact. And we have to make sure that filling in the station in Georgetown is going to be equally beneficial to us. What's important is that all of our folks who are unemployed in the District of Columbia on the east side of our city have access to jobs. The opening of the Silver Line is giving a lot of DC residents access to jobs in Virginia. We want to make sure that our residents can get all around the city where there are jobs to keep working.
Mr. Evans.
As mayor, I would take a leadership role away from this consent. Doesn't go against me. Thank you. As mayor, I would take a leadership role in just as mayor, I would take a leadership role in promoting our metro system. From 1991 to 2000, I served on the Metro Board and served as chairman in 1994 and again in 1997, as I mentioned earlier, was along with David Gunn, our general manager, responsible for finishing the metro system with a fast track program. I researched why Georgetown didn't have a stop. Georgetown needs to have one in the next go-around of building. Metro needs to continue to expand, and we have plans to build another 100 miles of metro throughout the region. There will be more inner-city lines and more lines in the suburban communities. How it was paid for first time around, it was an $11 billion system paid half by the federal government, and then the other half was split between the 3 jurisdictions. And we are going to have to go back to a formula like that in order to create and to build what is necessary for this region for the future. Unless Metro continues to expand, we are not going to be able to get around here. And so we have plans to expand it. Georgetown should be on the list when we build the new bridge from Roslyn, because they have to build that new tunnel in order to alleviate the congestion that is going to be created by the new line that's going out to Dulles and beyond. So when that happens, Georgetown should be a part of that, as well as the new line that they're planning to build up Wisconsin Avenue to connect with the red line up at the Tenley stations up in that area there. So I'm a big fan, a big advocate of expanding Metro throughout the city and throughout the region.
Ms. Lewis, you're up.
I start.
I'm sorry. My apologies. We're now going to have a series of what we call ultra tough questions. They're going to be directed each to the specific candidate. And some of them might be considered a little bit on the rude side. But of course, the press is known for occasionally asking rude questions. Mr. Evans, given the poor reputation for integrity of the city council, how could you oppose taking away a committee chairmanship from Councilmember Barry after he was shown to have repeatedly engaged in questionable practices?
At the end of the day, I voted to take his committee chairmanship away from him, just to clarify the question. But initially, I did not support it, and I still think it was a bad idea. Because frankly, committee chairmanships in the council are very important, not only for the person who holds it, but for the ward that that person represents, or if you're an at-large council member. By Mr. Barry losing his committee chairmanship, he lost resources that Ward 8 now does not have. But beyond that, Councilmember Barry came forward and admitted that he had made a mistake. That's where it generated from. He was sanctioned, whatever the word is, by our new ethics board and fined, and then it was referred back to the city council, who then also sanctioned him, but took a step further that I didn't think was necessary to take away his committee chairmanship. Now with Councilmember Barry, if you remember, we took away his committee chairmanship once before, and again, he repeated the bad behavior. So having said that, when this vote came to the council for the final time, I think it was unanimous, except for Councilmember Barry. There was one other person, I think you yourself voted not to take his committee chairmanship away.
Thank you. Mr. Wells, a council member who was not running for mayor told me that you have accomplished very little in your 7 years on the council. The member gave you credit for the bag bill, but said there was little else. Would you please give us 3 or 4 other pieces of major legislation that you have authored and that were in fact approved?
Well, first off, that I oversaw human services for 4 years. And what did we do under that? What we did is we created Housing First. The first time they put the money in for Housing First, the council took it. The second time they put money in Housing First, they put it in the Human Services Committee to where I could protect it. Housing First is one of the most successful initiatives to get the most chronically homeless in that we have had in the district housed. And it's been very successful. We've had it for 6 years, and we have a 90% retention rate, and I'm very proud of that. The other thing is I stood by juvenile justice reform. Saturday after Saturday, Colby King wrote, gosh, how can we allow Vinnie Schiraldi and this administration, with Wells not helping get rid of Schiraldi around juvenile justice reform? Stood by it, and we've got fewer kids that are committed to the juvenile justice system than we've had in years. I just championed through, with assistance, but I just championed through the minimum wage, its index, and then obviously we're going to decriminalize marijuana. I've got a majority for that.
Thank you.
So I think we can continue, and I can go on for about 10 more days if you'd like, because I'm not done yet.
You voted against legislation proposed by Mary Shea banning owners of gas station real estate from forcing operators to buy gas only from them. The result had very little effect in your ward, where the major station real estate owner and wholesaler owns few stations. But many report the legislation's failure is costing many drivers in this part of the city about 20 cents a gallon.
There was a series of legislation, several pieces of legislation offered by Councilmember Che around gas stations that I simply did not agree with. In one case, she wanted to say that gas stations could offer the first right of refusal, which we do in no commercial cases in the District of Columbia. In this case that I think you are talking about, there was a big argument as to whether the policy that she proposed actually would hurt consumers or help consumers. So yes, I represent Ward 4. We're 75,000 residents, 20 strong neighborhoods, but they sent me down to this council to vote on matters that affect the entire city. And on this case, there was a lot of dispute around who was right, who was wrong. And I don't agree with Ms. Che.
Thank you. Mr. Orange. In May, you became the first council member to be admonished by the new Board of Ethics and Government Accountability. In a negotiated deposition signed by you, the board said you had interfered with health inspectors who were preparing to close down a business infested by rats, and said that you abused the prestige of the office for someone's private gain. Why should voters elect you to higher office less than 1 year later?
Well, first of all, what happened in that situation happened on Christmas weekend, on a Friday. And I was called to work out an arrangement where the health violations could be addressed within 24 hours and 40 employees could continue working without being laid off. If I had to do it over again, I would in fact do it again because those 40 employees were able to continue working. The health violations were resolved in less than 24 hours. The city was able to continue making tax revenue, and we moved forward. What Vega actually said that if in fact this had not been the first case, this would have been nothing because the Department of Health indicated you can in fact clear those violations in less than 24 hours, and you did not have to shut down the market for 5 days over the Christmas holiday and send 40 employees home without pay. So that's what you call good government services, good constituent services, and I will do it again.
Mr. Shallal.
Will this be rude or difficult? Which one? Because you had rude at the beginning, so I just was wondering. Go ahead.
It regularly takes at least a year, if not longer, for a new school chancellor to get his or her organization working. Change at the top often works against any progress the departing counselor has made. Given that our test scores have been improving, should you be elected and follow through with your approaches educationally, would not the education progress we have made be negated, and it takes possibly several years to put your reforms, no matter how successful, into place?
Well, I think the premise of the question is really flawed. First of all, I have here some test results, actually. The NAEP results that show actually the gap between black kids and white kids has gotten wider. That's with a D, not with a T. Has gotten wider since since this so-called education reform has actually taken place. I don't like demonizing an individual or anybody really in the system, but I do take exception when the top educators say that we cannot do middle schools or we have to funnel our kids to charter schools. I find that inappropriate and not something that I would be able to support. Having said that, I'm not willing to break the system to start over again. I think we have done some progress, but I do believe that we have to rethink the way we do schools and rethink the way that we have set up schools for failure. And we have to put a moratorium on closing neighborhood schools. I think neighborhood schools not only get closed as buildings, but you shut out communities. And I don't think that's appropriate.
You have a great deal of experience in national issues, but you have not had much exposure on local issues. Starting off as mayor, isn't there a requirement for greater experience on local issues than you have?
You know what? That is a question that so many people have asked me. One of the things that I want to say to all of you this evening, I came to Washington over 35 years ago to go to American University. And I came as a young woman from the South with the hopes and dreams that any young person that comes to Washington is to make sure that I have an opportunity to achieve. And then once I do that, do I also have the ability to give back to a community that has given so much to me? So I take issue with that question because for 35 years, I've been involved with the local politics. I started working with Patricia Robertson Harris. That dates me. It tells how old I am. But one of the things, I've worked locally as the chief of staff in DPW. I've worked locally as the chair of the Women's Commission. But I've also worked nationally and internationally. And through the life cycle of my career, I believe the mayor that you need is one with the types of experience and qualifications that I bring to this job.
Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter, some of the questions that we asked tonight, you had a little problem answering. And we're wondering if you could, some of the local Georgetown questions.
Give me what? Let me know. I'll answer it right now.
I'm wondering.
I will say the LRAA, I was kind of thrown off by some guy that probably did something, but yeah.
The lack of experience in local issues, does that make it difficult for you to take over as mayor?
Not at all. Why? Because I'm going to hire all these wonderful people in the audience that don't know what I know. That's what the mayor's job. All these guys are telling you they know all this stuff, but they don't know everything at all. And none of us do. And if any of you know everything, tell me where he's at, because I'm getting ready to vote for him to be mayor. So I believe that what you need is something new, fresh, and innovative. I'm 31 years old. And I believe that we got to give young people hope. I give young people hope because if they see me, just them seeing me right here with these gentlemen here, these are wonderful people, actually. And just them, I'm not saying their politics are wonderful, but I think individually they are. So just by me even being able to be here and go through this process motivates the people in my community. So I believe that if we want to bring a change and something different to Washington, D.C., I think that you should vote for me, and I think that you all should vote for me as well.
Should the district turn over citizenship or lack of citizenship to the U.S. Attorney Agency when suspects are arrested for alleged criminal activity, when they are convicted, or when they are convicted of a violent crime, or not at all? And I think the next person is Shallal.
Clarify the question.
I'll restate the question. Should the district turn over citizenship or lack of it to the U.S. Immigration Agency when suspects are arrested for alleged criminal activities, when they are convicted, or just when they are convicted of a violent crime or not at all?
I think there's already mechanisms in place for such actions. I think there's a difference between a traffic violation of someone being stopped, having to be then immediately hauled into jail, and then you call in ICE to be able to send them off to some sort of deportation process. I don't think that's what the district should be in business to do. I do believe that violent crime is a whole different issue, but I want to laud the district for having these new driver's licenses, certainly for immigrants, that give them an opportunity to be able to get a car, to be able to have an ID, to be able to use that ID in different places, at least within the city. I think that's a really important first step to embrace all the new immigrants. I came to this country as an immigrant, and I know how difficult it is when you get started here. And I don't condone someone coming in here and causing crime, but I do believe that oftentimes immigrants are caught in nets that really are unfair, and they end up being carted off in a way that puts them in a very unfortunate situation.
Mr. Wells.
That's just that.
As a general matter, that I believe that we have so many immigrants that are here that don't have full documentation, that are afraid of their federal government, and I do not want them to be afraid of their local government. We do not control prosecution, such as the U.S. Attorney's Office. We need an independent Attorney General, but also we need to be able to have self-determination. This is one of the reasons that we need to be a state. We need to be able to protect our residents, however they got here, to be sure that they're treated fairly and that they're not living in the shadows. The number of immigrants that are here that do not use government services, whether it be child protection, domestic violence services, they're afraid of the police, just for this reason is really unconscionable. So we need to be a city that has our values, that we can protect our residents no matter how you got here. Certainly in terms of a violent crime against the district residents, that's going to be an answer that will, unfortunately, will happen in a federal court and not a D.C. controlled court.
I believe that when we arrest immigrants in Washington, D.C., we need to sign them up as citizens as well at the same time. I also believe, because I'm going to be honest with you, it's hard enough all over the world. So when you come into Washington, D.C., and you're in a place that you really want to be, then we really need to just go ahead and let everybody be a part of the process, the way I want to be a part of this process. So we need to, what I would do is make sure that we will make people feel as though that we're not out to get them, because if you got here, then you came here for a reason, and this is America, in Washington, D.C., it's the nation's capital, and we should lead by example. So I want everybody here. I want a diverse community. I want to change D.C. to meaning diverse city.
Thank you.
Thank you, and Davis, I want to thank you and all of everybody who's involved in pulling this forum together. I really enjoyed hearing the issues that you've brought to the table. I'm going to have to excuse myself after this question, but I wanted to, again, thank you for doing this. We thought actually that everybody running for mayor would be here tonight, and we're going to be looking forward to hearing all the candidates defend their records and put their issues on the table. To your point, I think I agree with much that has been said, that we want our residents, and I'll just speak as a woman about the women that I represent who are immigrants. And too often they suffer from domestic violence and don't call the police. They don't call the police because they are scared of what their status will mean if the police show up. It's our job in D.C. to protect our citizens, not to do the bidding of the federal government. We want the federal government to get its act together with immigration reform, but our first duty is to protect our residents. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
And I support our current policy here in the District of Columbia, which is not to turn over the residency of someone who is involved in the criminal justice system. That's what our law is now, and I support that. But this speaks to a much bigger issue, and that's the entire treatment of individuals who are in our country right now who are here illegally. And the federal, national government has got to come forward with a method to somehow get all of those individuals, 15 million people,
to become citizens of the District of Columbia and of the country. It is foolhardy to think that you are going to deport 15 million people who are actively contributing to our economy. Just here in the District of Columbia, that situation exists, where there are a number of individuals who are living here, not legal, who are contributing to the economy of the District of Columbia. But it is a national issue that needs to be dealt with nationally. On the local issue, though, what we've done is we don't turn over the citizenship. And secondly, what we just did is to make sure that every individual who wants a driver's license can get one. But if you're an illegal, there's a little notation on it that indicates that it is not illegal. You're not a legal citizen.
Can I have some water, please? No, I'm dead serious.
One of the issues that is so important for us as a city is to always be a part of not only in the discussion, but leading the discussion. And so I do firmly believe, as the next mayor, that the immigrant population, as high as it is in DC, that we should be a leader, the mayor should be a leader on immigration reform. Because no one in our community should be afraid of anything, especially when it comes to law enforcement. One of the things that is really, really clear is that if we had put on the ballot the Attorney General that we had voted for in 2010, who would then be the top law enforcement official in this city, we would not be having this conversation right now about what would be taking place with those individuals, who would be actually doing it. And that's the way we need to continue to lead. So that's one of the things why I will firmly be the strongest advocate for making sure that we put an Attorney General on the ballot to become the top cop in the District of Columbia and be a partner in our government about all of our laws and rules that need to be enforced.
Mr. Orange.
As mayor of the District of Columbia, my job is to protect the citizens of the District of Columbia. And that's the utmost job that I think that we have, protect our citizens. Now, at the same time, we also want to protect immigrants and non-immigrants because they are citizens and residents of the District of Columbia. But I can tell you, I have no tolerance for violent criminals, whether you are a violent immigrant or a violent non-immigrant. Violent criminals have to pay the cost for the crimes that they have, in fact, inflicted on others. A violent criminal has to pay. But other than that, we should make sure that everyone is protected in the District of Columbia. All our residents, all our citizens, all our immigrants, everyone deserves the protection of the Metropolitan Police Department, and they should not be in fear of the federal government and that the MPD is out to turn people over. However, the exception for me, violent criminals.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we're now getting very close to our closing time. So we're going to start off with closing statements, a minute and a half. Now, we had a drawing, and Mr. Shallal managed to win it. So he's going to be the last speaker. So we're going to start with Mr. Wells. You have a minute and a half to summarize why you should be elected.
Thank you very much. And thank you for everyone participating in this forum. As you know, our city's at a crossroads. We're going to have to decide which way we're going to go. Are we going to go with the status quo, or are we going to make the kind of changes and have the integrity in government that we deserve? We've seen our government have the greatest crisis of ethics in the history of home rule. And so that is why I am not taking corporate dollars. So I answer to you. I'm a change candidate, and I also have a vision. I believe every family should have an elementary school first choice in walking distance to them. I believe we need a 21st century transit system. A transit system that really takes our city to the next level so that we have transit equity all over our city. Whether you live in Wards 7 and 8 or you live in Wards 3 and 4, that you have the same opportunity transit, and we can build a transit system together. The other thing I believe in is that the greatest economic development program we can have for the city is to invest in our youth. That I have proposed, as you saw in your paper, Davis, that we put a $100 million investment that includes current funding and new funding in our young people. Every young person that wants an after-school job should be able to have one. We should be able to engage the youth instead of what we currently have is that if you have the kind of background that you need, you can afford housing, you can afford to stay in the district, And also, I do believe that together we can make this a safer city, and that's an investment that will make a great city. Thank you very much.
Mr. Carter.
I believe that you should vote for me because I care about the residents of Washington, D.C. I'm a 7th generation Washingtonian. I'm focusing on bringing innovative new ideas. All my other opponents are focused on what each other are doing. They're all taking credit for what they're all doing together and what the actual workers and the agencies are really coming up with. But what I want to do is I want to simplify government. I want to make it so that the average everyday person can be involved in the process, can be empowered, because democracy is when you use your tax dollars for me to run, I got to bring you along with your input so you can be a part of that process. You can benefit, your children can benefit, your community can benefit. You also should vote for me because I'm going to make sure that the seniors have all the needs met that they have. For instance, a lot of our seniors are forgotten. A lot of them are dying in public housing. What we need to be able to do, we need senior support workers, SSWs. They're going to come into the communities. They're going to knock on that door, make sure that we understand that, make sure that we're helping you move forward with your lives the way you need to. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to bring vocational training citywide into the schools. I'm going to also start a program called Geared for Global. And what that's going to do is going to teach children all across the district public school system, and as early as kindergarten, how to speak other languages so that we can break some of those cultural barriers that we have in Washington, D.C., so that some of our yellow citizens are not in positions where they're being forced out, because we have like a 48% dropout rate with themselves as well. I want to diversify the schools.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
I'm going to do a lot more, but that's all I can say right now.
First of all, I want to thank the Citizens Association, the Business Association, the Barton House, and most of all of you for coming out here tonight to participate in this debate. I want to be your next mayor because I want to bring the experience, knowledge, and leadership skills that I have learned in my 22 years on the council to the mayor's job. We have a lot of challenges ahead of us. I have been a part of the revitalization of this city in the financial area, in the economic development area, and many other areas. And as your next mayor, what you want is someone, not who promises things, but someone who has done things. In the education field, I was the leader in the mayor takeover of the schools and in the school modernization. In affordable housing, I've created thousands of units of affordable housing and will continue to do that. Economic development, there's not a project in this city, large or small, that I have not been involved in, which has not only created the base for the revitalization of this city, but has created tens of thousands of jobs for district residents. And public safety, we've taken a city that was the murder capital of the country in 1994 to make it one of the safer cities in America today. I can bring the leadership skills, the experience and knowledge to address all of those areas and to make this city work for all of us. So I'm here tonight to ask you for your vote on April 1st to make me the next mayor of the District of Columbia, and I can bring the prosperity we are now enjoying to everyone. So thank you all for coming out tonight, and God bless.
As I travel around the world, working for President Obama, serving Secretary Clinton in the State Department, it has become really, really clear to me that after 35 years, all we have to do is just go around from Ward 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 8. And we know that we're not just dealing with crisis outside of our borders. We're dealing with a crisis inside of our borders. We have a crisis in affordable housing. We have a crisis in our schools. And we have a crisis when we're talking about homelessness. And more importantly, we have become a city where the inequalities around education and healthcare and housing has become so pronounced. I have the skills and qualifications to not only focus the local, but to also use the networks, the relationships, the partnerships, and the collaborations that I've been able to create for 35 years of the life cycle of my career to bring them to work here in the District of Columbia. I've been doing that since I started here as a student at American University. I've been doing that when I served on the board of Women and Girls in DC government. And I've been doing that as I have been working with state and local leaders all of my life. Better schools, housing for all, and to make sure that we're safe is going to be the areas that I will focus on to make DC a city that works for everyone.
In 1999, I was elected to the DC Council when we had junk bond status, a control board. Our mayor had been stripped of all powers except for oversight over parks and recreation. And during that time, Ward 5 was really like the dumping ground. So if you want to look for where the seeds were planted for economic development, it started in Ward 5 with Home Depot and Giant. I had all the economic development summits. Vincent Orange was the first person to travel from the council with Mayor Williams to Las Vegas and came back home with Home Depot, Giant. Now we have Costco. Look around Catholic University. Everything happened at the summits that I established and started. If you look at education reform, look at McKinley Tech. I reopened up McKinley Tech as McKinley Technology High School, an $85 million project. Just last year, President Obama came and gave that school the School Excellence Award because 90% of those kids are reading proficiently and 90% of them are proficient in math. When you talk about recreation facilities, it started in Ward 5, Turkey Thicket, North Michigan Park, Brentwood Recreation Center. I planted the seeds for where we are today. Jack Evans has selective amnesia because I was there. And let me tell you one thing, I'm an attorney, I'm a certified public accountant, I have a master of laws in taxation, I get things done. When it came time for the minimum wage, Vincent Orange got it done. When it came time to resolve the issues on the food trucks and restaurants, Vincent Orange got it done. I get things done for people. I work for people, and vote Vincent Orange on April 1st. And let's have a good future. Leaving no one behind and taking no one for granted.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone hanging out till the end like this. There's over 50 years of experience here on this space. So when they say that they have about a minute to speak, they really have had years and decades to speak. And the results are very clear. The results are very clear. This city is more divided than ever. This is a city that is rich in resources, but really poor in vision. This is a city that should be welcoming to big businesses, to small businesses, to developments, but also should be a caring city for its youth, for its elderly, and for the most vulnerable. This is a city that needs to embrace the newcomers, but at the same time value the families that have been living here for so long, that have given the city its character, its resilient soul. This is an important city that I think all of us here, I assume, love very much, as I do. But this is a city that I think could do so much better. We can actually have affordable housing that's truly affordable to everyone, so we don't push out the people that have been living here during the worst of times when things get better. We need to have schools that really work. We need to stop calling schools failing. When schools fail, and we cannot fail. We have to have neighborhood schools in every neighborhood, successful neighborhood schools. We need to make sure that all the jobs we have are living wage jobs. And we need to make sure that the city works for everybody and there's no waste. The city has a lot of waste. And I don't want to visit to the DMV or DCRA Office of Tax and Revenue to be like a visit to the dentist. I'd like to ask for your vote on April 1st. My name is Andy Shallal. I look forward to serving you as your mayor. Thank you.
I think this group of candidates showed that they are an outstanding group, and they need a standing ovation.